Have you ever loved someone to the point of getting lost from yourself? Have you been silent when you wanted to scream, or shouted when you should have silenced? The truth is that, in many relationships, we confuse love with attachment, desire with hurry, and respect for weakness. But true love, the one who remains when passion cools, is born of respect, and only survives when there is self-control. Stoicism does not teach you how to love, lest it teaches you to love better. With balance, with honor, with awake soul. Because loving without respect is selfishness disguised. Today, I want to invite you to see love with other eyes, to put virtue above emotion, and to find out why the true Stoic values respect above desire. If you are tired of loves that hurt and seek a love that builds, so this video is for you. Stoicism, before being a set of philosophical ideas, is a way of life. A way that invites emotional responsibility, respect for the other, and the constant search for virtue. In relationships, Stoic does not act moved by blind passion, but by lucidity. He understands that loving someone is not losing control, but finding it. Because true love is not supported by impulsiveness, but in integrity. Marco Aurelio wrote, "What is not useful for the hive is not useful for the bee." This means that in any relationship, we should not only think about our pleasure, but in mutual good. A healthy relationship requires mutual respect, space to grow, and, above all, self-control. Without it, love becomes prison. The real Stoic does not want to control, but walk along. With freedom, with loyalty, with peace. A relationship based on Stoic philosophy is built on the idea that we do not control others, only our reactions. When this is understood, there is less toxic expectation and more healthy acceptance. The other is not there to fill our gaps, but to add to our existence. And this vision transforms the way we relate. Stoic understands that love should not be an escape of pain, but a conscious choice even in difficult days. To love someone is not to find perfection, it is to find partnership. And the virtue of loving well is precisely to cultivate respect on easy days and especially in difficult days. A relationship is only true when it can go through fire and not burn. When there is mutual respect, there is room for growth. Both feel safe to be who they are. No masks, no fear, no games. And this is the fertile soil for love to flourish with deep roots. This is why the true Stoic values respect above any impulse. One of the biggest signs of wisdom in a relationship is to recognize that we will not always be right. And that's fine. Maduro love does not seek superiority, but balance. Stoic gives up of overcoming a discussion to preserve harmony. He knows that the ego can scream, but the heart he loves learns to hear. If the base is solid, there is no need for manipulation. There is no room for emotional games, blackmail, or empty charges. The Stoic trusts. And if there is no confidence, it reflects if this is really the right place to be. After all, respect begins by not submitting to unbalanced relationships. Throughout life, we face disappointment and mismatches. But Stoic understands that every pain can be a lesson. Each end can be an opportunity for self-knowledge. And all the love lived with respect, even if it ends, leaves a brand of learning, not regret. Love guided by philosophy is not cold, it is conscious. It's not distant, it's stable. He is strengthened in the constant presence and serenity in the face of challenges. Therefore, those who live love with Stoic base does not despair in the face of crises, but seeks to learn and evolve with them. Therefore, loving with respect is not a moral requirement, but a path of wisdom. A relationship is only lasting when the two feel valued, free to be authentic, and at the same time committed to taking care of each other. It is this balance that Stoic seeks. And finally, remember, Stoic doesn't love it in half. He loves whole, but with his eyes open, with the heart in peace, and with the certainty that true love is one that is born of mutual respect. It grows with self-control and blooms in the freedom of two beings that are chosen every day. When you choose to take a deep breath instead of exploding, you are loving. When you choose to listen before you judge, you are loving. Self-control is not a weakness, it is wisdom channeled force. Stoic understands that every emotion needs to be felt, but none must rule its life, especially when you are before the person you love. Self-control in relationships prevents anger, prevents what the affection has built. He gives us time to think before speaking, to choose the path of construction and not destruction. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how do you react to that matters." To react wisely is to love with maturity. It is knowing what respect is worth more than any momentary pleasure. To love with self-control is to refuse to be a slave to their own impulses. Remember that the heat of the moment can destroy years of connection. A word said with anger can hurt more than one blow. Stoic chooses to be kind even when it is right not to be. He understands that peace is worth more than being right. True strength is to dominate yourself. It is not screaming louder. It is not to impose your wishes. It is knowing how to wait. It is retreating when necessary. It is apologizing without pride. Self-control allows love to be constant, even on stormy days. He is the pillar that sustains respect. Stoic also knows that controlling is not repressing, but transforming. He does not deny his emotions. He recognizes them and redirects them. In doing so, he takes care of the other without abandoning himself. Love only blooms where there is internal balance. Those who do not understand each other cannot donate with truth. When there is self-control, there is security. The person by your side knows that you are not dealing with a time bomb. She can trust. It can open. It can be vulnerable. This generates deep connection. Because there is no fear. There is presence. There is commitment to peace. And this is rare, precious. Self-control is saying no to yourself when the ego screams for revenge. It is not to feed disputes. It is knowing that true love is not a scenario for emotional wars. It is fertile ground for the construction of a story where both feel valued. Stoic does not play to win. He builds to last. It is also important to remember that self-control is not something born ready. He is trained. It is strengthened in the daily repetition of small choices. Choices that say, "Today, I prefer to respect my head." Love grows when each decides to be the Calrest version of himself. In times of crisis, Stoic breathes and seeks wisdom. He does not despair, does not accuse, does not hurt. He observes, reflects, and responds based on reason, not gross emotion. This is not coldness, it is conscious presence. It is proof that love can be strong without being violent. The world is already full of impulsive, reactive, destructive loves. Stoic love is the exception. It is the one who does not give up on the first conflict, but neither is he annulled. He supports the relationship with maturity, firmness, and serenity. He understands that those who love self-control loves clearly. In the end, loving with self-control is saying, "I take care of what I feel, not to hurt who I love." And this is noble. This is rare. This is the essence of love that transforms, builds, and remains, even in the face of difficulties. True Stoic loves responsibly because it knows that love is choice, not impulse. There is nothing wrong with wishing someone. The problem is in transforming desire into an idol. Stoic knows that pleasure must be guided by reason, because where there is no respect, desire becomes manipulation, becomes obsession. It becomes selfishness. Love without honor destroys. And who really loves never wants to see the other diminished or disrespected. Desire, when not controlled, can become a force that nullifies the other. He looks at the person not as someone to be loved, but as a means of satisfying his wills. And this is not love, it is consumption. Stoic rejects this kind of utilitarian love. He wants, but desires with respect, with conscience, with limits. Respect is more than not betraying. It is not using words like weapons. It is not invading the space of the other. It is not to make emotional blackmail. Respect is the foundation of trust. And without confidence, everything crumbles. The real Stoic prefers to lose pleasure than to lose his peace. He understands that desire goes through, but the consequences of an untapped act are. When desire overlaps with dignity, wounds arise. The uncontrolled passion may seem romantic, but it is often just a reflection of poorly resolved need. To love someone in a success is wanting the good of the other, even when it means putting limits on their own impulses. It is to choose to preserve the relationship instead of seeking instant gratification. Seneca said, "True happiness is not to be a slave to desires." In relationships, this phrase is a reminder that desire should serve virtue, not the other way around. To love wisely is not to use the other as emotional discharge or escape from frustrations. It is seeing it as someone worthy of the best we have to offer. Mature desire is one that is born of knowledge, respect, and coexistence. It grows over time, not in a hurry. It is fed by gestures, by care for truth. Stoic does not fall in love with an image, but with an essence. And that changes everything. Because who connects with essence does not hurt on impulse. Many confuse intensity with truth. But Stoic understands that the intensity that hurts is not love, it is uncontrolled lack. Loving in depth is different from loving in a hurry. Respect is the brake that prevents the love from becoming destructive. It is he who defines how far we can go without exceeding what is sacred in the other. Desire without respect is fire that consumes. Desire with respect is fire that warms. The difference is intended. It is in the presence of conscience. True love does not seek to dominate, but walk next to it. Stoic does not give in to the urgency of pleasure because it values the slow and solid construction of a true bond. That's why respect needs to come before the touch, before the promise, before the "I love you." He is the first step on any healthy path. Who respects does not lie, does not omit, does not manipulate. And even when desire hits hard, he remembers, my integrity is worth more than a moment of pleasure. In a world that trivializes touch and ignores the soul, Stoic chooses the opposite path. He looks in the eye. He listens. It values the presence more than appearance. And when you love with the whole body. Yes, but also with the whole spirit. With all the ethics. With all the honor. In the end, the true Stoic knows the love that is born of desire passes. But the love that is born of respect remains. And this is worth it. It is the one that builds. This is the one that liberates instead of arresting. And if it is to love, so that it is with desire, yes, but above all with integrity and honor. Loving is not an impulse, it is a daily decision. It is waking up and choosing to respect, even when the other is not on their best day. It is choosing patience, empathy, care. Stoic knows it does not control the other, but controls its attitudes. And that's where your freedom is not being hostage to the actions of others. Seneca wrote, "It is part of the healing the desire to be healed." In relationships, this means that it is necessary to want to be better, better to you, and better for the other. With each discussion avoided, with each controlled impulse, with each word dictated with wisdom, the relationship is strengthened. Stoic does not love for need, loves by choice. And who chooses, commits. There is no magic in healthy relationships. What exists is the constancy of the decision. Loving in good days is easy. It is difficult to love when the other fails, when there is silence, when the world weighs. Stoic does not depend on the partner's mood to maintain its serenity. He loves with stability, without oscillating to the taste of emotions. This daily decision to love is not passive, it is active. It expresses itself in care, listening, patience. It is to offer space for the other to breathe and at the same time to be present. The lasting love is not what promises a lot, but what you choose to stay on gray days. Marco Aurelio said, "You have power over your mind, not about external events." This applies directly to relationships. We do not control what the other feels or does, but we control how we choose to react, how we choose to love, how we choose to stay. To love with conscience is to remember that you always have a choice. Every relationship undergoes tests, but Stoic faces these tests as opportunities to grow, not as threats. He does not abandon in the first sign of conflict. He observes, adjusts, forgives when necessary. Because you know that loving really is to resist pride and choose, once again, continue. The constancy of love is in small attitudes, in the good morning said with love, in the careful listening, in silent respect. It doesn't take big gestures every day, but small constant acts that say, "I'm here, I choose you, even today." This is worth more than any great swear. Stoic does not seek perfection in the other. He knows that everyone is flawed, including him. Therefore, practices tolerance. Not the one who accepts everything, but the one who understands, talks, proposes, and starts over. He chooses to be together even when there is flaws, as long as there is respect and mutual effort. To love like an Stoic is not to give up easy, but it is also knowing when it's time to stop. When the other no longer chooses to stay, when the disrespect becomes routine, Stoic retreats with dignity. Because choosing to love is also choosing not to get hurt indefinitely. Love is not prison, it is a choice on both sides. Lasting relationships are not the result of luck, but daily choices aligned with virtue. They are built with conscience, with intention, with presence. Stoic understands that loving someone is constant internal work. It is the art of being better for the other while being true to yourself. And in the end, Stoic looks to those who love and say, not with words, but with actions, "I choose you today." And tomorrow, it will repeat this choice. Not because you need it, but because you want to. Because loving with freedom and honor is the most noble in the Stoical walk. Not every answer needs to be given on time. Sometimes silence is the greatest demonstration of love and respect. Because the silence of Stoic is not indifference, it is wisdom. He knows that words said in the heat of anger can hurt more than actions. So breathe, reflects, and then speak clearly, calmly, with compassion. The true Stoic is not carried out by the need to overcome a discussion. He prefers to preserve the relationship than to inflate his own ego. And that requires humility, requires self-knowledge. Because the silence that comes from the dominion of itself is more powerful than any scream that comes from uncontrolled. Seneca taught that nothing is more honorable than a calm heart. And in a relationship, this is gold. When one of the two learns to shut up at the right time, it avoids a climb of wounds. Sometimes silence is what prevents love from becoming pain. Stoic does not escape the conflict. It only knows when it is not time to confront. Silencing is also giving space for each other to think. It is offering a break in emotional chaos. It is to demonstrate that you value the relationship more than a quick response. Strategic silence does not move, it approaches. Because he shows that there is emotional maturity and willingness to build, not destroy. But the silence of the Stoic is not eternal. It is just the preparation for a fairer, wiser, more loving speech. After the silence comes the serene dialogue. Stoic does not accumulate sorrows. It processes feelings and comes back with lucidity. He speaks when he knows his words will not be weapons, but bridges. Silence is a filter. It prevents unfair words from escaping in times of turbulence. It protects the dignity of those who love, because there are things that, once said, cannot be erased. Stoic values the permanence of love rather than the momentary pleasure of overdue reason. In a world that screams all the time, silence can be a revolutionary act. And in love, it is a gesture of affection. Conscious silence says, I could return, but I prefer to preserve. It is the most elegant way to respect each other and protect what is being built together. Many confuse silence with weakness, but it takes more courage to shut up than to attack. It takes inner strength to hold on to anger, to contain the impulse, to wait for the right time to express yourself. Stoic does not seek to win, it seeks to heal. Therefore, your speech comes clean, and your silence comes full of wisdom. This silence is also a form of listening. He observes not only what the other says, but how he feels. He perceives the lines, the gestures, the tone. He does not respond in automatic, because he is present. And being present is one of the greatest gifts that can be given to those who love. It is important to remember that silence is not absence. It is a lucid presence. He does not shut down by neglect, but by care. He does not turn his back, but extends a break for the relationship to breathe. It is a sacred space where love matures and gains strength to face the challenges. In the end, Stoic knows speaking at the right time can save a relationship, but shut up at the right time can save her even more. And to love wisely, that's it, knowing when to speak, when to listen, and, above all, when silence is the most loving gesture you can offer. You can only respect each other real when you learn to respect yourself, when no less than it deserves, when you take care, when you learn to say no. Stoic knows its values and defends them firmly. He does not surrender to any relationship just for fear of loneliness. He prefers to be only with dignity of what badly accompanied. The basis of any healthy relationship is self-respect. When you value yourself, you automatically raise the pattern of what you accept. And this is not pride, it is consciousness. Stoic understands that to love someone with truth, one must first be whole. Those who are shattered inside cannot build anything solid with each other. Epictetus said, "The main task of life is simply this: identify and separate questions so that I can clearly say to myself which they are external and not under my control, and which ones have to do with the choices that I actually control." This clarity prevents you from accepting disrespect for confusing affection with attachment. When you respect yourself, you stop begging attention, accepting emotional crumbs, justifying yourself too much. You recognize your own value, and this is reflected in the way it is positioned in relationships. Stoic does not beg for love. It offers the best, but without leaving in the process. To love yourself is not to put yourself in the last place. It is not letting the other's desire disturb their needs. It is knowing how to balance generosity with limits. The self-love of Stoic is silent but firm. He does not scream, but is respectful in each choice. He doesn't have to prove anything, just live with coherence. To respect yourself is also to be honest with yourself. It is admitting when something is hurting you. It is having the courage to leave places that do not welcome you. Stoic does not cling by usual. It remains where there is reciprocity. And if there is no, he moves away with serenity. Because he understands that peace is worth more than any emotional attachment. Stoic knows itself. He understands his limits, his vulnerabilities, his values. And that is why it is not lost in toxic relationships. He knows what he wants, what he needs, what he deserves. And this self-knowledge guides you in all your effective decisions. He does not expect the other to complete him. He is already whole. When you respect yourself, you inspire respect. Your presence communicates security. Your words have firmness. Your actions have the purpose. And this energy attracts people who also live with integrity. The respect that comes from within is reflected in the surrounding environment. It creates more true and less needy relationships. It is common to see people who cancel themselves in the name of love, that mold each other until they lose their own identity. But Stoic never sacrifices its essence to fit in one's world. He understands that true love does not require this inner death. To love is not to disappear, it is to share. Stoic also knows that self-respect is expressed in the way it is about difficult days. He does not mistreat himself, does not judge himself with cruelty, does not require perfection. He welcomes himself. He gets up with dignity. And this strengthens him to love the other without getting lost in himself on the way. In the end, true respect is born inside, and only then overflows out. Stoic loves in depth because it respects itself with truth. And that is why your relationships are not based on need, but choice. Choose for real connection. Just exchange for love with honor. Being stoic is not being cold. It is knowing when to open and with whom. It is loving in depth, but without losing balance. Healthy vulnerability is one that is born of trust, which shows your pain but does not give your peace to anyone. Stoic exposes itself, but is not lost in the other. Vulnerability is essential for building real intimacy, but it needs to be guided by wisdom. Stoic does not deliver its heart to the first sign of attention. He watches, he feels, he trusts when he perceives truth, consistency, and respect. And then, it allows the other to know its essence. Many people confuse vulnerability with lack. They think you show yourself too much will make the other. But Stoic knows that it is not the exposure that keeps someone by its side, it is the real connection. He understands that opening the heart is an act of courage, but also of criterion. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be prepared to be ridiculed and hated." Vulnerability involves risk. It involves the possibility of rejection, but it is also the only way to deep relationships. Stoic does not fear the risk. It just does not surrender with closed eyes. Showing yourself vulnerable with wisdom is not being afraid to say, "I'm not well," but don't expect the other to save you. It is sharing what you feel without blaming each other for it. It is assuming your part responsibly and leaving room for the other to do the same. Stoic does not overload it, it shares. True vulnerability is not dramatization, it is authenticity. It is allowing the other to see who you are real with strength and fragility, for sure and doubts. This requires courage. And Stoic has this courage because it doesn't live to look strong, but to be true. To love with vulnerability is also knowing how to hear the pain of the other. It is not judging, not minimizing, not interrupting. It is offering presence, listening, and empathy. Stoic knows that the silence attentive heals more than 1,000 advice. He doesn't try to fix the other, he welcomes, and thus build confidence. But Stoic also recognizes when its vulnerability is being used against it. He realizes when there is manipulation, lack of reciprocity, or disrespect. And that's where your firmness comes in. He does not close for fear, but for protection. Because loving with wisdom is also knowing how to withdraw when necessary. As Stoical wisdom teaches that you should not give your emotional tranquility to anyone. This does not mean isolate yourself, but position yourself. If someone disrespects its vulnerability, Stoic does not respond with hatred, responds with removal. He chooses peace instead of insistence. True relationships are those in which you can be vulnerable without fear, where there is room to fail, learn, start over. Stoic builds this space with daily gestures of respect and presence. And so its vulnerability is not weakness, it is a bridge. It is the way for a deeper love. In the end, vulnerability with wisdom is the balance between opening and preserving itself. It is loving without nullifying itself. It is trusting without blinding yourself. Stoic knows that the soul only really connects when it is seen honestly, and that is why he loves with courage, but also with clear limits. Relationship is not possession, it is partnership. Stoic loves like the one who walks side by side. No strings, no emotional dependence. He understands that each one has his time, his dreams, his way. Healthy love does not invade, respects. Don't suffocate, inspire. And respect is to give freedom without fear of losing. Everything that is beautiful dies in jail, said Epictetus. The real Stoic does not want to imprison anyone. He wants to share the way, divide joys, support sorrows, but without ever losing identity. Because the love that chokes is not love, it is insecurity. And Stoic loves with courage, not fear. Who loves with excessive attachment ends up choking the most beautiful in the relationship, the freedom to be who is. Stoic understands that the person by his side must be free to grow, change, and even err. It does not require perfection, but sincerity. He loves what the other is, not what he expects him to be. To love without arresting is to make room for the other to flourish. It is not controlling, but trusting. It is not to impose, but to invite. Stoic knows that true love is not strengthened in control, but in freedom of choice. And who chooses to be freely loves much more. This free love does not mean a lack of commitment, but commitment without prison. It is a presence pact, not in possession. It's walking together for choice, not for fear of being alone. Stoic values bonds that are renewed every day, not those maintained by obligation. Possessive love is born of insecurity, but Stoic works its inner security. He doesn't have to arrest to feel loved. He does not require constant evidence, because he trusts himself and what he builds with the other. And if something changes, he deals with it with maturity, not despair. Freedom in love is not absence of care, it is care without invasion. It is respecting the time of the other, It is understanding that each one has the right to think differently, to have their own opinions and moments of silence. Stoic doesn't have to know all the time. He knows how to wait, can trust, he knows. When there is freedom, there is authenticity. People show themselves as they are, without fear of judgment. And it is on this solo that true love is born. Stoic appreciates this truth without filters, this presence without masks. He wants to be with those who feel comfortable being whole. The love that holds is fragile because it depends on constant vigilance. Already the love that frees is strong because it feeds on mutual choice. Stoic builds firm relationships, not with chains, but with ties of trust, empathy, and respect. Ties that do not suffocate support. To love with freedom is also to accept that the other can leave, and yet keep loving with wholeness. Stoic understands that nothing is guaranteed, and therefore values every moment with presence. He does not live in the anxiety of loss, but in the gratitude of coexistence. In the end, Stoic love does not imprison or abandon. He walks alongside. He offers his hand, not the collar. He builds bridges, not walls. And that's why, when Stoic loves, he doesn't try to retain, he cares. He chooses, he remains. Free will. For love with honor. In a world of empty promises, attitudes are worth more than speeches. Stoic need not say it respects. He shows, with your choices, with your loyalty, with your presence. He does not require fidelity, he inspires. And this goes for any kind of relationship, loving, familiar, friendship. People feel when they are facing someone righteous. And this integrity attracts, because it's rare. In a time where so many appearance relationships live, Stoic experiences essence relationships. He understands that true love does not need many ornaments. It just needs presence, respect, and truth. Seneca wrote, "The words convince, but the examples drag." This is especially true in relationships. Stoic does not try to change the other with sermons, but with constancy. He demonstrates who is through his habits, his calm in crises, his firmness in values. And that plays more deeply than any argument. To love with the example is to be present when it would be easier to escape. It is keeping calm when it would be easier to scream. It is listening patiently when pride wants to counter. Stoic is this silent anchor. He does not scream for attention. He gains respect for the way he acts every day. Many speak of love, but few support this love in small daily attitudes. Stoic, on the contrary, understands that true care is not in beautiful words, but in coherent behavior. He fulfills what he promises, and when he misses, he assumes. This generates confidence. This builds. When there is a disagreement, Stoic does not run to overcome the discussion. He wonders how he can act more fairly. Your focus is not right, but living with righteousness. And that transforms the environment. Because the other realizes that he is before someone who practices what he preaches. This kind of coherence has the power to generate profound changes. Sometimes the other begins to reflect on their own stance just by living with those who live with integrity. Stoic knows it has no power over the other, but it has about itself. And that is why he invests in his own character. To love with example is to show that respect is not something that is required, it is something that is planted. What confidence is not charged, it is built. Stoic understands that in a relationship, every everyday action is a seed. And sooner or later, everything that is planted blooms for good or for evil. Many relationships end up with emotional where caused by inconsistencies. Broken promises, impulsive attitudes, lack of constancy. Stoic runs away from this not for fear of losing, but for commitment to what is right. He knows that love needs firm soil to grow, and this firm soil is not made of words, but of practices. It is in the daily gestures that love is strengthened. In how are you? Sincere, in the embrace without haste, in the look he listens. Stoic need not prove anything, it just lives with truth. And that, by itself, already transforms everything around. In the end, the example is the legacy of Stoic love. This is what is when the words go out. This is what sustains confidence even in moments of silence. The real Stoic knows the best way to love someone is to be someone who is worth being loved, not only for what it says, but especially for what it does. In the end, what supports any relationship is honor. It is the ability to love with truth, respectfully, and act consistently. The true Stoic does not negotiate its values for a moment of pleasure. He loves with open eyes, with the heart in peace, and with the certainty that true love is one that is born of mutual respect and blooms in the field of self-control. To love with honor is to make choices that you will not be ashamed later. It is being faithful even when no one is looking. It is taking care of each other even on days when you are tired. Stoic understands that loving with honor requires effort, but this effort brings peace. Because there is no regret in those who act with integrity. Seneca said, "Who's brave, it's free." And those who love with honor is free to lie their heads on the pillow with quiet conscience. Stoic does not carry hidden guilt, does not live on hidden regrets. He lives clearly, firmly, and with the serenity of those who act with a heart aligned with reason. Honor is saying no to what can destroy what you took so long to build. It is in resisting passing temptations to protect something lasting. Stoic does not live on impulses, it lives on principles. He knows that true freedom is not doing whatever he wants, but in doing what is right. To love with honor is to protect the other from their own instability. It is choosing to be constant even when everything invites to oscillation. Stoic is not perfect, but is committed to good. He misses, but corrects. He feels angry, but does not hurt. He frustrates, but does not destroy. Because your greatest goal is to maintain peace with you and with whom you love. Peace is not born of the absence of conflicts, but from the presence of virtues. When the relationship is guided by honor, there is room for forgiveness, for listening, for restart. Stoic does not want perfect relationships, it wants real relationships, where respect will always be greater than the desire to overcome or dominate. Honored love also knows how to leave with dignity when you realize that there is no more reciprocity. He does not beg, does not humiliate himself, does not cling to what erodes. He withdraws with respect for himself, because he understands that internal peace is worth more than any unbalanced bond. Honor is to make love a reflection of your deepest values. It is choosing someone and not playing with that person's feelings. It is being present even when there is no immediate reward. Stoic knows that the most beautiful love is not what makes promises, but what acts responsibly every day. To love with honor is also knowing how to value who is by your side. It is not leaving it for later. It is to demonstrate appreciation with simple gestures, with sincere words, with genuine care. Stoic is no-use love, it lives love in the now, with conscious intensity and with full responsibility for its choices. When love is lived with honor, it becomes shelter. It does not weigh, does not hurt, does not confuse. He is firm, calm, constant. He brings peace in and around. Stoic loves like this with presence, truth with balance. And this love, even in silence, leaves eternal marks. In the end, the message is simple but deep. The true Stoic values respect above desire, love with integrity and honor. Because what really remains is not the intensity of impulsive gestures, but the constancy of a love lived with virtue. And that this is what builds relationships that resist the time. If you have gotten here, take a deep breath and reflect. How are your relationships? Have you loved or in a hurry? Have you chosen peace or fed the war? Stoicism does not invite you to be cold, but to be fair. He invites you to love with a soul awakened, with a serene heart, and with attitudes that reflect virtue, not need. Remember, the true Stoic values respect above desire. He loves with integrity. He takes care without mastering. He remains without suffocating. Because in the end, the love that is worthwhile is one that can be lived with open eyes, without guilt, without fear, without shame. A love that builds, not that destroys. If this message has touched your heart, share this video with someone you love. Perhaps what is missing is not an expensive gift, but a deep reflection. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so as not to lose the next videos. Here, we talk about philosophy, but with soul. We seek sense, but with our feet on the ground. And before leaving, comment below, "I choose to love with honor." So I will know that you stayed until the end and that this seed is germinating in you. Because the world needs more people who love consciously, that they respect before you wish, that remain with purpose,